lot of people are starting to ask themselves if they should go traveling again. Well, in today's video, we're going to discuss the reasons why you should or shouldn't. Here we go. Hey everybody, the first thing that we should probably talk about when discussing traveling in these times is that it is absolutely a personal choice. I will not tell you that you should travel. I will not tell you that you shouldn't travel. I think that you should make that decision for yourself, and let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are, because I really believe this is a collective thing that we need to do together. That being said, I think the first thing we need to discuss is the issue of safety. And I've been looking into the studies around this disease and really trying to understand what we need to prepare ourselves for if we're going to travel again. So there was actually one study that's talked about people who are at more risk for this disease going around. So if you're in any of these categories, definitely be careful. That would be males aged over 65, people who smoke, and those with other comorbidities such as hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, respiratory diseases, things like that. So if you fall into one of those categories, that means you're at a greater risk. You might want to take in consideration that you need a few more precautions. I have asthma. This is why I think about this a lot. I don't want to catch a disease that's going to kill me in my mid-30s. So a lot for me to think about, especially since I have a young child who I take care of by myself. So despite all the risks, you still want to travel. I totally understand. I want to as well. But is it safe? Let's go over what some of the studies are saying. There was one study that looked at germ transmission on airplanes, and they noted that commercial airlines are a suitable environment for the spread of pathogens carried by passengers or crew, but that the environmental control systems used in commercial aircraft seems to restrict the spread of airborne pathogens, and the perceived risk of infection is actually greater than the real risk of infection. Now, that doesn't mean that they are totally safe, of course. Now, airplanes do recycle their air with about 50% new air and then push it through HEPA filters, which is why it's so good at getting out all of the contagions and pathogens in it. That same study has shown that things like influenza, yellow fever, and TB just don't transmit to other people on planes very well. And they actually mentioned a case where influenza did spread in an airplane, and it was because it was grounded on the tarmac for a few hours with an inoperable ventilation system. So it kind of shows that if you're stuck on an airplane without that ventilation system, yes, you could definitely get sick. They showed that in that case. But that if the system is working well, you are very unlikely to get sick, and that again, the perceived risk is greater than the true risk. But don't think that that means everything is 100% safe. There was another study, and this study showed that there was a 3-hour flight from Hong Kong to Beijing during the SARS outbreak. There was one person infected on the plane, and they possibly transmitted it to 16 other people on that plane of roughly 119. Now, that study said that that plane may have had a malfunctioning cabin filtration system, but it's still unclear. So of course we need to remember, even if we're reading scientific studies like these, that the numbers aren't always going to be 100% accurate. For example, a lot of these numbers might be coming from the airlines themselves, so maybe there's a reporting bias there. They don't want people to be fearful of getting on their planes. Moreover, a lot of these diseases have a significant incubation period, so you could get sick on the plane but not know it for maybe 2 weeks later. So cases like that might not be recorded as well. Just keep that in mind. So let's say that you do travel, you get on a plane, no problem, but what happens if you do get sick in another country, or you get sick on the plane and you realize that you are infected while you're there in another country? Well, this is what you need to really think about, and that is the availability and the quality of hospitals in the country you're going to. But again, when you're traveling, one of the big things is that you are often congested into small areas with people, airplanes, trains, cars, buses, etc. My biggest recommendation when you're traveling is that you try to get your own transport. Can you buy a car where you're going? Can you just use an Uber and not get into the collective taxis and things like that? And lastly, obviously, you have to wonder, where am I going to travel to? Well, where do you want to go to? Obviously, you need to look that up and see if they're actually open. So you really have to think about, what are you going to do if you land somewhere and have, say, a 14-day self-isolation period? That's quite long. You're not going to know how to get food or go out and actually enjoy yourself for 2 weeks. I was down in Colombia when the quarantine started, and actually my dad showed up on March 21st, and the quarantine was implemented just a few days later. This isn't the worst place to be quarantined, but we are still quarantined in Colombia. They said, that's it, we're closing everything down, we're closing all of the borders, so even my dad's flight home was canceled. He was not very happy about that, so how would you feel? Do you want to be in a country where it's possible that they're going to re-quarantine everyone and lock you down even though they've already opened up, say their cases spike? If you want to know more about how I travel as a single parent, why don't you go ahead and check out this video right here. If you want to know about 6 ways that I've made money while traveling, go ahead and check out this video right here. And please don't forget to subscribe before you go. I appreciated you sticking around with me, and I will see you next time. Peace.